Welcome, it's Hazel Jarvis, it's Art Online, and it's the start of a new term. And today we're going to do a beautiful lotus painting. This painting is going to be week 1 of 2 weeks devoted to lotuses. And the first week we're going to be tight and practice drawing the flower. And the second week we're going to be much looser and much more exuberant. So I'm going to use a page from this sketchbook. I'm going to tear my page out, but if you're right-handed, I would suggest that you use this side of the sketchbook if you want to work in the sketchbook so that you're not constantly bumping up against the coil. You want to cut a template to draw around for your image. I cut my template by using some printer paper, folding it in half, and just cutting out a nice shape, which I then hold onto my painting paper just to make sure that it fits nicely. My first effort was a little wide, so I just trimmed it down. If it looks nice on the page and you've got a little bit of border, then you're good to go. I'm going to mix a lovely luscious green for the background. So I'm going to use 53 and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of 56. Load a nice big brush with a lot of this lovely dark paint mix, and you want to just stroke it in the middle, in the center of your medallion, keeping it pretty nice and wet. Then you'll take a smaller brush and you're going to nudge that paint up to the edges. Now we have to wait and let it dry, which in my experience can take up to half an hour. So here is my background dry, and you'll see that I have a darker edge here, which will make a leaf, which will be perfect. And I don't worry if I have any streaks or blemishes because we're going to paint over them. Inspiration for this design comes from an 18th century Chinese plate. With a nice sharp pencil, you're going to draw the lotus design onto your background. So I've pressed much harder than I would do normally so that you can see the design. If your paint is wet, you're going to groove in with the pencil and you won't be able to erase it. So you want to really be sure that your background is dry before you pencil in your design. Top side of your leaves, you're going to paint in another layer of this dark green. And I add even more of the 56, the darker color, so that it really stands out. 3 areas of beautiful dark green. Now you're going to take a little bit of your white, put it in a palette, and you're going to add a little bit of that green to the mix so that you can get the back side of the leaves. So just test that color on a tissue, knock a little bit of extra paint off, and then we're going to paint the back or the underside of our leaves. Take a little bit of this mix. I'm going to put it in a different well. I'm going to add a tiny bit of this green, so I've got a medium color, and I'm going to use this to paint the stems. I add a little bit of yellow, number 40, to this mix then, and I'm going to paint in the pistil, the center of this lotus flower. Now I'm going to load my brush up with some really thick white and paint in the flowers themselves. I'm also going to add a little butterfly up in the corner. I still have a lot of white on my brush, I'm going to just strengthen the stems a bit. A sort of grass pattern over here, so I'm going to do a different shape leaf on these stems. Mix up a little bit more green, and I'll just put that leaf in as a smaller leaf just for contrast. I have one brown old seed head here, so I'll paint that in a dark brown. At the detail, we're going to work on the principle of dark on light and light on dark. So you're going to take your favorite brush and you're just going to practice doing some very, very nice, fine, thin lines. And just keep practicing until you feel you've got enough control and you're ready. So we're going to go dark on light and very little paint on our brush. To add the veins to the lotus leaves, which are so distinctive. Still working dark on light, we're going to take a tiny bit of pink. I'm going to use number 34, and we're going to put a little bit of colour into our lotus blossom. Add some details to the petal. So we're going to just put some very fine lines in, working from the centre out. Now we're going to do light on dark. A little contrast, I'm now going to add a tiny bit of black ink. The edge a little bit more definition, so I'm going to go back with my dark green and I'm just going to go round the edge. I feel I've got a little bit too much in the way of stem activity here, so I'm just going to be cowardly and I'm going to paint over some black leaves to cover it up. And lastly, we're going to add a tiny bit of gold because this is, after all, the first project of the new year and we should be celebrating the new year. So for Christmas every year, I treat myself to a new tube of gouache, a new tube of gold gouache, and annoyingly, inevitably, the old ones dry up. So I just cut the tube open, I put it in a little jar of water, and I add in a little bit of water in this jar, and then I have my gold accessible and ready to hand. So just test the gold on some napkin just to make sure it's a nice consistency. And then we're going to add some stamens, put a little bit on our butterfly, a tiny dab on our old seed head, and a little gold on some of our new black leaves. Put a little gold on our close-up lotus. I'm going to put a tiny, tiny amount of black just on my lotus down here. So this has been a lovely little project. We've practiced light on dark and dark on light, and it's a lovely way to warm up. It's part 1 of 2 weeks on the Lotus. And I hope you've enjoyed this project, and I can't wait to see what you do. Happy New Year!